The two options you had, second-degree murder or manslaughter, you felt neither applied.
Right. Well, because of the heat of the moment and the stand your ground. Then he had a right to defend himself. If he felt threatened that his life was going to be taken away from him or he was going to have bodily harm, he had a right.
So even though it was he who had gotten out of the car, followed Trayvon Martin, that didn't matter in the deliberations. What mattered was that those final seconds, minutes, when there was an altercation, and whether or not, in your mind, what the most important thing was, whether or not George Zimmerman felt his life was in danger.
Well, that's how we read the law. That's how we...
So, for everyone who was saying, you don't know what was going on in there, you don't know what happened, what about now? What about hearing that woman directly say, right there, that that's what happened? That nothing else mattered. Everything leading up to that, the type of person that Zimmerman was, suspicion, none of that mattered. At this point, I'm going to argue. Remember when I said that I don't think DOJ has an argument? Maybe I was wrong. Because if you're telling me in all of this how the law was applied here, there was no looking about what led up to it, what happened, why it happened. It was only about that moment, whether or not he was scared. And you asked this jury, do you think that he was scared in that moment and was defending himself? All that means is that the jury has to think that the person who was there was scary enough. Hence the scary Negro defense. That's all that matters. If you can make enough doubt about that person, about might you ever be afraid of this guy? I mean, come on, look at him. Huh? He's scary.
So that was the belief of the jury, that you had to zero in on those final minutes / seconds about the threat that George Zimmerman believed he faced.
That's exactly what happened.
So whether it was George Zimmerman getting out of the vehicle, whether he was right to get out of the vehicle, whether he was a wannabe cop, whether he was overeager, none of that in the final analysis mattered. What mattered was those seconds before the shot went off. Did George Zimmerman fear for his life?
Exactly. That's exactly what happened.
Do you feel that George Zimmerman racially profiled Trayvon Martin? Do you think race played a role in his decision, his view of Trayvon Martin as suspicious?
I don't think he did. I think just circumstances caused George to think that he might be a robber or trying to do something bad in the neighborhood.
Circumstances. Like
circumstances.
What? Like what? What circumstances what would happen that an unarmed kid walking home with icy and Skittles is now a robber or burglar? I'm willing to hear that out.
Why do you think George Zimmerman found Trayvon Martin suspicious then?
Because he was cutting through the back. It was raining. He said he was looking in houses as he was walking down the road, kind of just not having a purpose to where he was going.
And if you're a Negro walking down the street, you must have purpose.
Yeah, you got to walk. You got to get to where you're going, son.
Yeah, you must have purpose. You can't walk down the street. You must get where you're going, because otherwise, how do we know that you're not dangerous?
May I suggest, and I hate to say it, but when I walk down the street, if Trayvon's not from there, and it's a gated community, there are plenty of people. I do the same thing when I walk through a nicer neighborhood than what I live in, and I just walk slow, and I will look at people's houses. I hate to say it, I will literally do that. That's why people say he was being suspicious. He was looking at people's houses. I go, I do the same thing. I didn't know that you were supposed to get shot for that. I had no idea. When I'm in a nice neighborhood, people have kinds of nice, I observe people's houses. I can't help it.
I've been doing it since we've been walking through Berkeley.
Yep.
We're walking around. It's nice area.
I saw
looking at stuff.
I saw someone's house with a waterfall in it in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn. Waterfall. What? So, and apparently I should have been shot in the back for making that observation while I'm walking past it. I don't know. I guess I apologize to those people as I invaded their privacy and was a general civil menace, a domestic menace. I apologize.
Well, was that a common belief on the jury that race did not play a role in this?
I think all of us thought race did not play a role.
So nobody felt race played a role?
I don't think so.
None of the jurors?
I can't speak for them. I'm not
that
their
wasn't
voice.
part of the discussion in the jury room?
No, we never.
So the idea that the child was profiled because of race was never a discussion in the room.
Well, you know.
It would have been a discussion in the room if there were some black people on that jury. I'll tell you what.
Well, we're in a post-racial society. Why would someone be profiled if there's no more race?
President Obama's protecting us all from the white man, for whom we blame all our woes.
Had that discussion.
It didn't come up the question of, did George Zimmerman profile Trayvon Martin because he was African American?
No, I think he just profiled him because he was the neighborhood watch, and he profiled anybody that came in acting strange.
At first, I didn't see this. Like I said, I didn't see it last night. I started watching the clips today because I realized it was our job to cover it. And after, because at first I saw some tweets, but they weren't really breaking down the depth of issues that's happening here. But finally I watched it and I heard it. I was like, holy shit. I don't even know how to respond to this, like, at first. And then the more and more I listened to it, and the more and more I looked at it, because flat out people were like, they hate her, and they were calling her all sorts of names. And I've always said that, and a lot of it has been a bit misogynistic, and I've always said that there's no reason, you don't fight injustice with misogyny or racism yourself. It doesn't make sense. I understand that you might be angry. That's just not how we do things. That's not how we should do things. So calling her all types of bitches and C's and all types of stuff, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's not necessary.
Me neither.
But, and flat out, I said directly, I can't hate Juror B37. I said, but I can hate the system that would put my life in her hands, her ignorant hands. And I think that's valid. And the more, like, I would argue that I've made the argument today that specifically this might be the best thing that could have happened. The literal thing I wrote was, I believe Juror B37 giving this interview is the best thing that could have happened. She is like a magnifying glass. The system is broken. And I believe listening to her and listening to her words and having that conversation, I feel as if, like, forget, I'm not even angry with her. And I know that might sound crazy because people are angry. People are yelling at her. I'm not angry at her. I believe that she is a product of America. And to focus my anger on her directly would be a waste of energy. I believe that to focus my anger on the system that creates this woman is what needs to happen. The system's broken. It creates people like this. You put people in a room that are supposed to be able to make these decisions, but they don't even understand the very construct around what these things that are happening. We talk about race on this show so much, and we break down these things so often, and we bring in the brightest minds in the goddamn country to lay it out. And so we look at things a little bit differently. But the fact is, most of society does not. And yet they are the ones making these decisions. How can you expect empathy for people when America doesn't understand the very construct that the people live in?